Чергова політична дискусія в ефірі програми Форум ТВ. Ми сьогодні говоримо із кандидатом на здобуття номінації від консервативної партії Канади Тедом Опітцом. So Ted Opitz is a former Canadian politician and a retired Canadian Forces Lieutenant Colonel who represented the Toronto riding of Etobicoke Centre as a member of the Conservative Party of Canada in the House of Commons from 2011 to 2015. He's now once again seeking the nomination in the riding of Etobicoke Centre. So good morning, Mr. Opitz, and welcome to our program.
Good morning, Roxana. Thank you for having me here.
So, Mr. Opitz, let's start with your community engagement. During your time as a member of parliament, you worked closely with the Ukrainian community, and over the past decade, you have also had the privilege of attending and contributing to the major Ukrainian events in our community. Can you please share a specific initiative or achievement that you feel made a significant impact on Ukrainian Canadians?
Sure. When I was a parliamentarian, I was the chair of the Canada-Ukraine Parliamentary Friendship Group. This is a very important community, clearly. My own mother-in-law is a Ukrainian background and born and raised in Winnipeg, and of course moved to Toronto like many. But it's always been a focus for me, and when I became the chair of Canada-Ukraine, I mean, our riding has a big diaspora of Ukrainians, and this is just a lifelong experience too. I went to school, Humberside Collegiate, with a lot of Ukrainians that are very prominent in the community right now. So it's always been part of my life growing up, but also part of my life in the military, where I served next to a lot of Ukrainian Canadian soldiers, and of course now going to Parliament and community engagement. So that's always been a bedrock for me. And where Ukraine is concerned, Ukraine is a nation that's always deserved to have its Euro-Atlantic future. They were delayed early on, when all the other Baltic states and others got their democracy through a lot of corruption. But Ukraine has turned the corner in the last 10 years, and it's been tremendous in what they've done. We can talk about some of those things later. But within the community itself, it needed to have that relationship. I've worked with UCC, I've worked with others. I've of course come to all the rallies and supported from there. But in Ukraine itself, I think one of the most important things I could have done as a parliamentarian is I helped provide the first 30,000 complete sets of combat uniforms to Ukrainian soldiers early on in that war in 2014. With Mr. Harper, I was a very, very strong advocate of Operation Unifier, which was training Ukrainians. And as a former soldier, I've trained a lot of soldiers in my own time. And I knew at this time that, an army doesn't train itself. Somebody has to help train them. It's just like any battalion. If you're deploying to a country overseas, you don't train yourself. It's another regiment that trains you and then gets you up to standard and goes. And that same applied for the Ukrainian military. And so I helped to do that and of course arranged to get Ukrainian soldiers here on courses at our war college, which we call the Canadian Forces College here. So there are now 2 serving presently up there. So things like that I found very important, and it's that consistent engagement with the community, which has never been far away.
So my next question is regarding military influence.
Yeah.
How has your 33 years of military service in the Canadian Armed Forces influenced your approach to leadership and policy making, especially in the areas related to national security and international affairs?
Well, this is part of my entire makeup. 33 years of service. I joined when I was 16. Very young, and went through, and partially because we, coming from an Eastern European background, of course, all our parents, our grandparents, we knew what happened during the Second World War, and this was something that was prevalent in my family, and both suffered under the Russians, my father and mother, and my mom under the Nazis. So this was something that growing up was very strong in our family, and I do come from a military background to begin with. And so that was never really a question of me joining the military at some point. I think my father was going to make that happen one way or another. And so that's always been an influence on my personality and what I do. But it's also the training. The 33 years of military training is, I think, a wonderful thing for most people. And I would encourage a lot of young people to maybe consider a career in the military or at least for a short time, because you do get a lot of skills that is lifelong in what you can do and adapt to anything you do in life. And when it comes to Ukraine, I think that those skills were particularly fortunate early on when the war actually began. And the West has to remember the war began in 2014 and didn't just start a few years ago. So that helped with, of course, the uniforms, the training, and other things as well.
In 2014, you were among 13 Canadians banned from traveling to Russia. What insights did that experience provide about international diplomacy, particularly in relation to the war between Russia and Ukraine?
Well, the war was wrong, still wrong. Vladimir Putin wants territory. He's a dictator. We all know what's going on in Russia. He is a war criminal. He's just simply a criminal. And what he's done to Ukraine, I pray to see him in front of the Hague one day and in a jail cell, because what he's done to Ukrainian families, the kidnapping of hundreds of thousands of children, the destruction of hospitals and nurseries, and he doesn't care. And on top of all the atrocities he's committed, has allowed his soldiers to commit to the Ukrainian populace is awful. And he was doing that then. I mean, even on the Maidan, with the Barkut and everybody, and the murder of the Heavenly Hundred, and so forth. I had no problem calling out Vladimir Putin as a war criminal publicly in Ukraine, on the ground, and in the House of Commons. And that's what helped earn me the distinction of being one of the first 13 banned from Russia. And that, to me, I wear that as a badge of honor to this day.
I could see you attending major Ukrainian events, including the independence celebration at the Centennial Park. So how do these events strengthen the bond between the Canadian and Ukrainian communities, and what role do they play in promoting cultural and political understanding?
Well, first of all, I have to credit the Ukrainian community. The Ukrainian community has always been super well organized. And understands the strategic importance of influencing politically, having a strong lobby at various levels, whether it's UCC Toronto, UCC National, or the World Congress. It's always been quite strong in influencing policy around the diaspora of Ukraine, which is their job, right, as an umbrella group. And of course, now that the war began in 2014 and has even in the last 3 years taken a very, very different turn, the community there has been tremendously vocal and strong. And so it's that constant engagement. Out of sight, out of mind. If you sit back and you don't do anything, or you try to stay a little bit quiet about it, that's not the path to take, right? Because right now, Ukraine, and if you could take a page from President Zelensky's book, he's all around the world. He's advocating, he's pushing, he's asking, he's demanding, which he should, right? Because Ukraine is facing an existential threat. And the community itself, right from the president in Ukraine down to the Canadian diaspora, is working very, very hard to influence Canadian politicians and thinking and keeping this foremost in the mind of Canadians, because I think this is a very important thing that affects all Canadians at the end of the day, and it most definitely affects Europeans, because Ukraine's standing stalwart for NATO at the front right now, and if Putin were to get through him, guess what? He's on the border of Europe.
Okay, let's talk a little now about current challenges at your riding. So what do you see are the most pressing challenges for the Ukrainian-Canadian community today, and how do you plan to address these issues if elected as the Conservative Party nominee for Etobicoke Centre?
The challenges, as I described, are still there, and the community is pushing. I mean, the rally on February 23rd across Canada is going to be a big one and an important one for everybody to attend. That's a tremendous initiative that the community does to get on. They have my complete support. I will be there. As always, with signs in hand. And if you remember those 10,000 bumper stickers and those signs, Chris Corwin Kuczynski and I made those at our own expense to give, that was our gift to the Ukrainian community to do that. But there's a lot more going on. We live here in Canada, right? And so it is important that, Ukrainians want the same thing as all Canadians, right? They want lower taxes. They want housing built. We live in very nice neighborhoods that are infiltrated by car thieves and all kinds of stuff. I'm on my street. about 6 months ago, they stole 12 cars in one night, right? And these guys, it's an in and out policy. When we were in government, as a previous Conservative government, we had mandatory minimums for people caught for this sort of thing. The Liberals took all that away, liberalized it again, and thus people are getting in and out of jail very quickly. You can be arrested, put on bail within 4 hours, and you're out reoffending again. That has to stop. That absolutely has to stop. So all these things that Ukrainian community just living here, and of course we do have a refugee population that has come in now, as they have all across Europe, right? And so, you know, I was just out with one of our MPs a few weeks ago, meeting with Ukrainian groups, talking about this. And one thing about the Ukrainian diaspora, for sure, is hardworking people, well-educated, integrate quickly, and get down and just contribute, right? Which is very important. So, so those will be initiatives that I'll be looking into.
Given the ongoing geopolitical tensions and conflicts involving Ukraine, what strategies would you advocate for to enhance Canada's support for Ukraine on the international stage?
Well, we have to rebuild our military right now. It's in tatters. But the
it's number one.
You know, I talk to my friends that are still serving, and they are incredibly frustrated. You know, some of them are just counting the days to retirement and trying to get out because, you know, the Liberals have taken the military and taken away the reason for it. The military is a team sport, right? It's not based on the individual or some of these other things. And when you start taking away that team effort, because as an infantryman, and that's what I was, you know, I depend on the guy on my left and the guy on my right to do their job, and they depend on me to do my job, right? It's a very integrated kind of process. And a lot of people join the military for camaraderie, for adventure, some for a sense of family, right? And when you start eroding those things, you're going to start eroding the institution itself, to the point now where we can't recruit. We're 20,000 people short, 20,000. I mean, we don't have enough sailors for ships. We don't have, you know, enough people to drive the tanks and so forth. So we have to repair that and get that back on stream. For Ukraine itself, we will do what the Liberals haven't done. There's about 300 or some odd armored vehicles that are parked that should be sent to Ukraine. You know, a lot of them are in great shape and work, and that's fantastic. Even the ones that don't, you'll find that Ukrainians are incredibly innovative. This is a very different war. I mean, I could spend an hour talking to you about this. Every war is different. But this war has got elements of World War I, trench warfare, World War II, 10-kilometer deep minefields. And then some of the heroes of this campaign are people we used to kind of joke about a few years ago, gamers, right? The guys that are driving those drones are absolute heroes. So a lot of that has changed. I would send those rockets to Ukraine. You know, one Liberal MP recently said in his opinion, they didn't work, and I will respectfully say that people in the military that actually do deal with rockets say they do. So I would send those to Ukraine very, very quickly because they can use those. They can be attached to drones. They can be attached to, you know, look, Ukraine has come up with tremendous weapons. The sea drones are, you know, I look at those and I think, who thought of this? This is just brilliant, because they started out with a Sea-Doo, right? And then Ukraine has come up with a weapon with a surface-to-air missile. It's taken out helicopters and taken out ships and so forth. And basically, they chased the Russian fleet out of the area. So one of the things I would do is, besides rebuilding our defense capabilities, industrial capabilities, which were strong 9 years ago, and they've been allowed to languish since. We need to reinvigorate that, but I would seek partnerships with Ukrainian companies because, you know what, I wouldn't want to lose that innovation. You know, necessity is the mother of invention, and Ukraine is living it right now, and the brilliance coming out of their scientists and their engineers is something I would love to capitalize on with partnerships between Canada and Ukrainian military and Ukrainian companies building these things.
Mr. Opitz, based on your experience both in military and in politics, what lessons have you learned about resilience and leadership that you believe are particularly relevant for the current global environment? It's kind of like personal question.
No, that's okay. Leadership is always the fundamental building block of everything. If you don't have a leader who's in charge, right? All of a sudden, you'll get a lot of people vying for it, and that's not helpful. So if like President Zelensky is clearly seen as the leader of Ukraine, nobody doubts that, right? And all the sub-leaders and sub-appointments that are doing their job are well coordinated. Same thing in the military. When I was a lieutenant colonel in command of a battalion, I'm the battalion commander, right? But then I had my company commanders and so forth, and I would direct those. So leadership is absolutely fundamental, and leadership in any game. It's not just the military, right? It's in politics. If leadership is absent, then we're not going to be taken seriously. And I think you could see some of this right now around the world. Canada has not been taken seriously, and then you got somebody who's very aggressive and has his own ideas. And
another aggressive neighbor. And
sure, but in fairness, this shouldn't be a surprise, right? Everybody knows who this individual is and saw him coming and everything else, and there should have been preparations made for this, and they're not. And so the current government is in disarray. There's nobody truly leading it because they're in a leadership race right now. You have a prime minister who's a lame duck, and I claim that he's on some kind of a little sentimental journey now, and he's trying, he's been to Europe, he's been here, he's been in other places, but, he's not going to be able to affect much in the next 30 days, really. And so it will be up to the next government, which will be a conservative government, I'm absolutely sure, led by Pierre Poilievre. It'll be a strong majority, and that's the kind of leader that I think you're going to want because he's resolute. He knows what he wants to do. He's laid out many of his leadership policies now on how he will lead this country forward into prosperity, whether it's an energy self-sufficiency. And by the way, let me talk about energy for a quick sec. If we were able to put in the energy pipelines and do the things we wanted to do under the previous conservative government, we would have been able to refine our own oil, we've been able to package our LNG and so forth. And what might we have been able to do with that right now? Displace any sales Putin is making in gas and oil, which would have been a tremendous asset to be able to erode his economic abilities. So I think we need to get started on that, get those tight industrial things going, and rebuild our own self-sufficiency in energy and defense. Canada has a tremendous capacity, but it's leadership that will make it happen, and a conservative government is going to provide that leadership to Canada to spur us on, and that filters right down to the riding level, right? I've been a leader, I've been an MP, I've run in all the other elections. I'm a very strong campaigner, and I know what's needed, and where it comes specifically to the Ukrainian community, the community knows me, I know them, and we're going to move forward and succeed together.
So looking ahead, what are the key priorities for Etobicoke Century, and how do you intend to ensure that the voices of the Ukrainian Canadian community are heard and represented at the federal level?
Well, first of all, my office is always open, right? And always was. I technically on the door was office hours, right? But if you worked shift and you couldn't be to my office till 9 o'clock, guess where I was? I was in my office at 9 o'clock waiting for you. This is, being a politician, being an MP, people forget, is also a service-oriented job, right? You have to provide the service to the people that elected you because they are, in fact, your bosses, right? So whether it's a Ukrainian community or any other community, everybody has to get that level of dedication and treatment, first of all. But again, we all live in Canada, and we are all living in this same economy. And so Ukrainian youth, for example, are the same as any other Canadian, right? It's hard to buy a house right now. One of the things we're going to do is cut the GST off real estate under $1 million, and we're hoping that the provinces do that because it'll make it affordable. Because it's not always being able to buy the house that's a problem, it's being able to maintain the house and the mortgages and so forth, right? And you have to provide those economic abilities, which also means building houses, which also means building industry, which also means creating jobs for people, and that's for everybody writ large, and for the Ukrainian community, which has a particular issue right now, of course. We know with the war and everything else, that this is a community that's highly focused, not only on living here in Canada, but of course, on family at home, on the war at home, and the outcomes for Ukraine, which are very, very important. And this is something I will always advocate to the highest levels. and defend Ukraine's right to a Euro-Atlantic future, to Ukraine's right to defeat Vladimir Putin and push him back across where he belongs, and see Ukraine enter NATO and the EU soon as absolutely possible. They need to be able to get in because that will provide guarantees to Ukraine. It will help the rebuilding of Ukraine, and once Ukraine does accede to NATO, protection of Ukraine under Article 5 going forward.
Mr. Opitz, thank you for the conversation. I appreciate your time and good luck.
Well, thank you. And if I can just add one thing, if anybody does wish to support me, you have to sign up. Let me explain how a nomination works. It's an election amongst Conservatives internally in the riding. And so a nomination date will be eventually set by the party, but the way you win this, of course, is to bring out the most people who are supporting you, and generally you sign them up as well. I mean, there are existing members, but of course, the more people you sign up to the Conservative Party of Canada, the better for you as a candidate, because you will win this, and that's easily done at conservative.ca. There's a join button, and it's very, just push that, and for 1 year it's $15, and what that entitles you to is not just to vote in the nomination, but also to contribute to everything in the party, to the conventions, to policy, and so forth. And you have to be a permanent resident or a Canadian citizen, and 14 years of age and up. And let me stress something about a 14-year-old, 15-year-old. This is the age when kids start to really network, right? To build their networks, to find colleagues, to start looking forward to their careers and other things that they want to do. This is a wonderful time to be able to build those networks, and political parties are one place to do it. Some of our leading lights in Parliament, in diplomacy and others started off as youth members. And so I would encourage parents to look at that, because it's a great first exercise in democracy before they're legally allowed to vote in a federal election. So I would definitely consider that. And I would, and if anybody needs to find me, I'm on social media everywhere. I'm on X, Facebook, Instagram, and of course LinkedIn. And with that, I'll say Дякую and Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава! Дякую за увагу нашим телеглядачам. Я також нагадаю, що повні версії наших програм можна дивитися на нашому YouTube-каналі. Бажаю вдалого тижня. На все добре!